Well,
Don't question my methods.
I asked Edward, I thought would be an interesting question, and it kind of related to what we were saying before, but like, what would be the modern day emancipation?
Oh, that's such a good question, and one that I don't readily have an answer for.
What about like abolition of privatized prisons?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about that last week. I thought that would be a great step toward what we're fighting.
What do you guys think could be an argument from, if we're working within the system of the Constitution and American law, what would be an argument for the abolition of privatized prisons?
I don't even know if it would just have to be, I think it would just be privatization on a mass level. Like, I don't think it would necessarily just pertain to the prison complex, but I mean, like, free trade and like even just like taxation. You know, I think there are other ways to get, like, there are so many ways that so many things that need to be rebuilt from the ground up, like the whole system.
Right, because the fact that any of our politics is motivated by capital gain is a problem in and of itself.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up because Noam Chomsky talks about this a lot, and he talks about Adam Smith and his influence on James Madison, and essentially what happened, during his time. And can I just read a little passage? It's short. Is that cool? Okay.
Yeah.
This is Noam Chomsky speaking. I'll do my best impression. No, I won't. I'm just kidding. The idea that great wealth and democracy can't exist side by side runs right up through the Enlightenment and classical liberalism, including major figures like de Tocqueville, Adam Smith, Jefferson, and others. It was more or less assumed. Aristotle also made the point that if you have in a perfect democracy a small number of very rich people and a large number of very poor people, the poor will use their democratic rights to take property away from the rich. Aristotle regarded that as unjust and proposed two possible solutions: reducing poverty, which is what he recommended, or reducing democracy. And then James Madison, who was no fool, noted the same problem, but unlike Aristotle, he aimed to reduce democracy rather than poverty. He believed that the primary goal of government is to, quote, protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. As his colleague John Jay was fond of putting it, the people who own the country ought to govern it. And then, so he designed a system that made sure democracy couldn't function. He placed power in the hands of the more capable set of men, those who hold the wealth of the nation. And other citizens were to be marginalized and factionalized in various ways, which have taken a variety of forms over the years: fractured political constituencies, barriers against unified working class action and cooperation. That was one of the answers I wrote for the Angela Davis reading. And exploitation of ethnic and racial conflicts. That's it. Hello?
Wait.
I'm still here. I'm just processing.
I'll post a link of this.
That would be great.
If you guys are not familiar with Noam Chomsky, this is like his jam, what we're talking about. Well, American government.
Can you paraphrase the inherent idea there? Sorry, I was looking at the Craig recordings and wasn't paying attention for a second. I'm sorry.
Aristotle claimed that true democracy, there was a fallacy or a problem because if you had a few rich people, they would be overrun by the majority who were poor. So James Madison he said the primary goal of the government is to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority, and the people who own the country ought to govern it. And so through, I guess maybe, I don't know how much you could consider the vagueness of the Constitution, that allows them to essentially kind of just perpetually mold the system to their gain, has everything to do with how fucked up everything is now.
That's wild. That's certainly how the government is functioning currently.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah.
they did good, I guess.
Here, let me copy this. Am I putting in this chat? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you guys aren't familiar with Chomsky, I suggest looking into him. His website is great. It's got like all his articles, transcriptions of his lectures, and he talks a lot about the American government.
And he's American, right?
Yeah. He was like he's an anarcho-socialist. Anarcho-libertarian socialist, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Buttress, you were saying earlier I think you were saying that it seems like people shouldn't be able to make capital gain off of stuff that like is necessary to like life and liberty and happiness. And I feel like if there were to be like some kind of miracle reform of the government, like it should be that people can only make like extra profit off of things that are like not necessary, like food and water and like shelter and stuff. Healthcare shouldn't be industries that people can make their entire like living off of.
Right. And government itself,
Well,
like I feel like just as we had separation of church and state, quote unquote, in 2020 we need separation of state and capital, because this is clearly the most influential variable on all of our politics. I mean, to speak of the industrial prison complex, a problem that is at a certain level ideological is now 100 times more complicated and hard to combat because of all of this financial incentives going on. We need to
like people
totally
buying out
remove.
senators.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much. Like, I mean, judges have been found to be essentially prosecuting people for money or convicting people because they get some sort of a paycheck, or there's going to be more funding for their local judicial system or something because, this or that company needs more people in the prison. Like, they're literally profiting off of sending people to prison. So it's just... It's so difficult. I mean, and yeah, like Rachel was saying, I mean, all financial incentivization needs to be removed, not just as it relates to this issue, but look at elections and shit. Look how much financial incentives buck up our elections, and literally anything. I mean, capitalism is destroying the quality of everything.
Yeah. Can I have a question for everyone? What, in terms of the term capital or profit, how do you think, what is necessary, and do you think there needs to be kind of like limitations to one's to the amount that one can have? And because they had really progressive taxation, like in the like all the way up until, or when did it come into play? When it was like they were like 85% taxes over a certain amount. That's like, can you imagine if that was now? So like, sorry, I just kind of got a little opinionated there, but I mean, just
totally.
the whole idea of accumulating wealth and its necessity in the West. It's kind of all based on this weird cyclical loop. Well, obviously it's redundant, but this weird cycle of like manufacturing product for consumption at every level, whether it be through the military or consumer products or whatever, housing.
Now
Like,
look,
you know,
look, I understand what you mean. It's like product of consumption. It's not just like in the means of just having money, just to obtain money. Like everybody, anybody. This is America. This is how you make it in America. You can obtain
yeah,
money in any type of way. Now, like I look at it a little bit more like a person like me. I'm sitting up here like, man, I wish they could like legalize weed across the whole country. So that like, like this is just me. Like for real, I understand. Believe me, I wish they could legalize weed across the whole country because it's not like they don't know this is one of the ways that they could like make a lot of fucking money. But this is also a way that they can keep us down, like people like me, like
totally.
they can arrest us,
Totally.
like we can just like straight up be sitting in jails, have to pay fucking $1,400, $1,500. Nigga, we can pay that shit, then be out of jail and still be doing the same shit. And the next thing you know, motherfucker, we still got to deal with the cartels, everybody else who doing this shit. And I'm just sitting up here like, bro, this ain't the way. But that's just me. Like, I'm just
No,
it's all fucked up. Like it's all fucked up, man. It's all fucked up. This is all. It's all just gonna be here. Like we don't fucking like figure out a way to like just make it like work, really work like we want it to. But it's all gonna be here, like regardless.
Yeah, and it has to do so much with conflicting interests because right now the government makes money off of having weed be illegal because, you know, they can throw people like you in jail and make a ton of fucking money. But if they want to make weed legal, the government wouldn't want to do that until they can make sure that they can make a ton of money off of it, like through taxation or something, because otherwise they're not going to do it. You know, if they can find a way to secure themselves as being, as not losing profit if they make all drugs legal or decriminalize all drugs, you know, like I think of the recent laws about vaping. You know, this is like an explicit example of this happening. Like tobacco companies don't have a monopoly on vape shit, vape juice and vape fucking products or whatever. So all these new young entrepreneurs come in with all their fucking vape technology and start making a fucking killing, and also taking a lot of customers away from the tobacco industries. And I think it's clear that the tobacco industries, they have so much money and they're in with so many lawmakers and shit. You know, I'm sure they incentivize somehow all of these new laws that make a lot of this vape shit illegal now, you know, like because it's a conflict of interest. And I'm sure the big tobacco companies are just like trying their hardest to start their own vape companies and shit and make sure they have a monopoly on vape shit before it becomes legal again or whatever the fuck they want to do, because they realize, oh, people want this thing, people want to quit smoking, you know, but they have to outlaw it for now because there's no way for them to get fucking rich. So let's change the law here, you know.
yeah. I mean, they should just decriminalize drugs in general. They did it in Portugal, and it seems to have a quite a positive effect.
But that's the problem. They make so much money off of the war on fucking drugs, you know, and all of that it's related to, that they're not going to do that. They need to have an incentive, and this is why we should make it illegal to incentivize anything, you know. I mean, also fucking lawmakers shouldn't get paid, period. They should be like parishioners, like like you get free housing or something, you know. I mean, I'm for like abolishing money, period, but as a temporary measure, at least, like, yeah, people should not get paid. We need to completely separate money from fucking politics. Like it's so fucked. Like, we can't have any moral or ethical or political philosophy that exists within this system of financial or incentivizing. Like, it's just throwing everything out of whack. There's no way to campaign for anything because ultimately money is the thing guiding all decisions.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at the sports industry. Oh, go ahead.
Somebody was asking earlier if you think we should have a cap on how much money people can make. And I just think that's interesting because I definitely do, but I think people really vary on what they think the cap should be, or like how you would even enforce something like that.
1 million.
I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a little bit, yeah, to expect like a cap, but I mean, I just think through proper taxation, you know, is a more feasible approach. Obviously,
Yeah.
such a. I said that, and thinking about it is ridiculous.
There's a couple
I don't know,
really
I
cool
think-
ideas for how to
I don't know.
implement
I
the
kind of
cap.
like it.
Hold on. You're all talking over each other. Lex, what are you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, in terms of right now, taxation on the wealth would be a way to redistribute that, but it is also denying people that have not had wealth, you know, the opportunity to succeed, because there are if we have the same opportunities across the board, education, you know, opportunities for jobs, all across the board, we would not need it. There would be no need for a cap.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So momentarily
Yeah.
that would work, but you know, when the wealth is redistributed, it's not going to work.
Well, so my like, so if the wealth is redistributed, and to what extent, like, so you're like, from what I understand is that just because the money is put back into the people, it doesn't change anything about, you know, big corporations still essentially, you know, air quote, running the country, right? And so
Not even big corporations. You give, you know,
but it will,
communities that are impoverished money, or
right?
individuals. You give me a whatever form of reparation and
Yeah.
liquidation. You know, these people don't have. Some people don't know how to, you know, finance a budget. They don't know what to do with
Yeah.
fucking wealth. So it's like, at that point, it's like they don't know how to manage wealth or manage an income that is greater than what they're used to. So it's like, how do you teach people to be financially responsible? How do you teach them how to, you know, own a house, you know, pay for all their, you know, whatever they need to do, and, you know, put that towards, you know, investments. And because those people in those communities don't have that same knowledge of how to, you know, invest and to grow their capital like some other
Right.
people do. So it's like, not even corporations, it's just fucking everybody. Like, I think it'll fuck everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there was to be, you know, this tax reformation, is that the right word? But you know, if it was massive, this would also, you know, so then it would in turn go into, you would hope, the educational system and the housing system, and so then all these other systems would be, you know, in place, which ultimately is for everyone's gain. You know, the only question becomes, to what extent do we need to have, you know, what's an excess amount of wealth, and what do you feel are the necessities that you need in order to live you know, a happy and fulfilling life, you know, whether through that's a sense of community, you know, or just being validated and acknowledged as an individual, and you find something, you know, that you enjoy doing to contribute to your community, or do you go out and think that amassing money is the way to do it? So I think I always think about how the media has to be restructured, and these myths that are portrayed, and, you know, as much as we could claim that, you know, movies and stories and music don't influence the way we actually, you know, we all know that they're fiction. It's like that those narratives are being ingrained in our brain, and the more we see it, the stronger the neural circuit is, and the more you perceive it as, you know, reason. So I think it's just like, this is like a multi-generational thing. But I think someone pointed out earlier, I think it was Noah, but he's gone. He said something like he was a little bit pessimistic, and, you know, there's a hesitant, there's, you know, people may be hesitant to enact because ultimately they won't see any major change in their lifetime. So I think if, once people realize that that's not the end goal, it's, looking towards what is possible, that is another big step that needs to be overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think a myth or a narrative that you could say has been reinforced since day one in many societies is the concept of ownership, period,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what is the philosophical concept of ownership? It begins as early as agriculture, which is, what, 23,000 years ago? This is my plot of land. This is my woman. This is my offspring. These kinds of ideas have been reinforced in many world societies since day one. And this idea of ownership is what underlies things like our systems of financial gain. I think that the concept in and of itself is problematic. And to think of things like wealth caps, I think about how we theorize when we create governments about doing things like preventing people from doing natural things like murdering each other. Murder, I mean, it depends on how you want to word it, but you could say that murder is a natural phenomena and people will always murder each other, and part of the role of government should be to protect individuals from being murdered, and this is something most world societies agree on. But I think too that we should think about this as it relates to the hoarding of resources, like people always talk about human greed as if it's like some inherent quality of all humans, and I think that that's not a really great way to look at it. But I think the idea, and an idea that is true, is that if people are not inhibited, they will hoard as many resources as is possible for them to hoard, and this is the thing that we ultimately end up calling greed. I feel like governments should also be tasked with creating some sort of obstacle against people hoarding an excessive amount of resources, because when you hoard resources, then you hoard them away from other people, and this is part of what we're experiencing. So I do think that there should, if we don't abolish the concept of ownership, period, which I personally think we kind of should, then we could at least do something like some sort of a cap on people, old people, set a universal cap, like you should not be hoarding all of these resources, because when you hoard them, you're preventing them from other people, and people are not going to stop unless you make them. So yeah, I think we should cap people off, because even just taxation, I mean, if you tax fucking Bezos, how much money does he make in one day? Like, isn't it, he makes like millions a day or some shit. Like, it's fucking insane. Even if you tax the shit out of him, he's still gonna have just this ridiculous amassment of wealth. I mean, the gap between the richest people in the world and the poorest people in the world is just fucking ginormous. Like, it's just insane looking at some of these statistics. I think I saw that Bill Gates could like buy the entire NFL 17 times over. Can you fucking imagine? I can barely afford a designer sandwich. Like, the fuck? Like, it's fucking crazy. Like, I mean, I think there should be a cap put on people as a temporary measure, but I think we need to move away from these concepts of ownership, period. I mean, government is supposed to, in the most idealistic sense, be a thing that preserves the livelihood of a group of people, and what kinds of things preserve people's livelihood: housing, healthcare, protection from violence, whether from other people or from the elements, things like this. Like, make this the role of government, and make this the role of having jobs, period. Any job that doesn't speak to an essential need should not be a job, And that includes things like being an astrophysicist or something. People are like, oh, that's crazy. We need like scientists and all this shit. You can't say that space exploration is essential, but people treat it like it kind of is. It's like people are going to keep doing these things, you know? The idea that people need to be incentivized to be an astrophysicist is absurd. I mean, these people don't even make a lot of money. The hardest jobs ever pay shit, you know? Educators, teachers don't get paid shit. There's always going to be people that are willing to be educators and teachers, you know? Like, make the most essential jobs, make the only jobs that provide housing for people, healthcare, whatever. We all share these jobs. If we all only did essential jobs and shared that, I mean, we would all work like 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day. It would be like doing your human chores. And then you go be a fucking astrophysicist if you want. Free housing, free education for everybody. You want to get a degree in astrophysics? Cool. It's free because all these people want to teach you it. Great. Like, people will be fine. Just make the jobs what's most essential. Disband all these fucking corporations. We don't need this shit. It's like most of us just work to make this small fraction of assholes incredibly fucking rich. Like, so they can run their fucking helium balloon company. Like, it's totally useless. It's bullshit.
And like a lot of the time where like people spend like most of their income on housing. Especially if you're
Right.
renting. So it's like I forget. I wrote a paper not that long ago about homelessness in Milwaukee, and it was saying that people below the poverty line, families below the poverty line, are spending about like 75% of their income just on housing alone, and that's fucking ridiculous.
Dude, not having to pay rent for 2 months because of coronavirus got me so far ahead. Like, I did not realize how much better off I am if I just don't have to pay rent. Like, I'm sure 75% sounds about right for my rent. Like, it's fucking crazy. Like, yeah, and it really is true. People say that being poor is expensive, and I feel like this is another way people are quote unquote incarcerated without being incarcerated. Like, I have never been so in debt as when I got really fucking poor. I'm like just starting to get out of certain things right now, but it's like, you know, you miss a toll on the highway. Now I'm slapped with $100 fees because I didn't have $15 on the highway, and like now I'm in. I owe $5,000 to Easy Pass. I don't even know how that happened because of missed tolls, and I've already paid them $2,000 because this happened to me a few years ago, and they're gonna suspend my registration. If my registration gets suspended and I get pulled over, then I'm gonna be really fucked. I'm gonna have to go to jail. I'm gonna have to pay bail probably. Like, it's like every time you're hit with something, it's just 100 times larger fee than what you were even in trouble for. Like, poor people are just, you just get fucked left and right. Like, being poor is so expensive. This is
They
another
raise
way that
it
we
like all the time, like these prices for everything. I know, like in Wisconsin, they raised the what is it called, the car registration fees to like 100-something fucking dollars every year. It's bullshit.
it's
like
crazy.
ridiculous.
And like things like fucking sending you to jail if you don't pay your child support, or you can't drive if you don't pay child support. I know in New York State, if you fall behind on child support, they suspend your license. And then it's like, well, how am I supposed to fucking go to work and pay off my child
They'll put
support?
like a warrant out for people,
Mm-hmm.
shit like that. Like my
Yeah.
dad definitely has had a warrant for fucking my entire life. And
Right.
it's weird too. They'll just go like they'll send him to jail, and then it's just like, okay, here's your fucking $500 fucking bail, whatever, some bullshit. And then
Right.
that
So you can
money
just
doesn't
get
even
out and get arrested again.
yeah, then I don't even get the money is the worst part. Just like, well, it gets divided fucking how many goddamn ways by that time. It's like, oh, thanks for $5, whatever the fuck.
Right. It's literally a crime to be poor. I had a warrant out against me because I fucking didn't pay some ticket on time. And they just like issued a fucking warrant. I'm like, what? Like, just because I don't have money, now I'm a fucking criminal because of a driving offense. Like, get out of here.
I think it's worse because they never like I've had instances where I've been driving without, like, with a suspended license or, like, whatever the fuck, and they don't even tell you is the worst part. Is like, at least send me a letter or some shit. Like, I'll just be riding without, like, a license or some shit, and then get pulled over, and they're like, definitely you cannot drive. And I'm like, what do you mean? But they
Right,
do
and
that
their computer
all the time.
systems and shit are never updated. Like, my boyfriend got arrested for something, and it was because they forgot to put something through. Like, they didn't update their system, so he shouldn't have even been arrested. And then they're just like, oops, sorry. Like, what? And he's not gonna get bail back. Like, it's just like, man, it's just, I hate it. I hate
Yeah,
it here.
it's happened to me many times, so many times, because of unpaid parking tickets, and then they'll suspend your license. They don't, like, send you a fucking cover.
Right.
Well, you can't drive. And I remember this one time I got pulled over, and this was back in high school, but I had a hella parking tickets. License was suspended. Driving around, doing whatever the fuck. I think here it's called a GDL, but it's like your fucking, like, temps or whatever. And you only can have, like, whatever, so many people in the car or some shit. And it was like,
your learner's permit, yeah.
yeah, it was like me and two of my friends, and I got pulled over, and they searched my car for whatever reason. And then the weirdest thing was they took my license plates off my car and then, like, told me to drive home. And I was like, what do you mean? And I had to pay to get my license plates back. I had to go to the fucking police station and pay them $50 to give me my license plate back.
What the fuck?
They didn't even
Why
give me
did
all the screws. I had, like, 2 screws.
those assholes. See, yeah, half these laws don't even make any fucking sense. Like, it really, I mean, they make so much profit just by sucking poor people fucking dry. It's so easy. If you're at a small disadvantage, no matter how small, just make that disadvantage exponentially larger and just bury people in fucking debt from legal fees and other fines.
It also makes me think about healthcare or like
I have
health
so much
insurance.
medical debt. It's not even fucking funny.
Yeah,
I don't
dude,
pay the
people
I
people
stop
leave
caring.
yeah, same. I just ignore I mean, I ignore too much. I don't even know.
They
Like,
call me every day, multiple times a day. The debt collectors are out there, especially during
for
Rona.
medical bills.
Yes, because they get, like, because they're older, so they get sent to collection,
Yeah.
and then they call me. I was paying them for a while, like, not a lot, because I had a couple bills from, like, hospital bills, and I'd pay, like, maybe, like, $25 a month or whatever on a couple of them. I was like, okay, I can't be, like, paying a lot every, like, couple weeks. And then they'd call me and they'd be like, can you pay this money? And I'm like, I'm paying you every week. They're like, that's not enough. And I'm like, okay, well, now you get nothing.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
like,
at least
well,
I'm making the
sorry,
effort. Like, fucking Christ.
The
dude.
health industry is so fucking predatory because they know that people will continue to pay to live. Like, there's no better incentive to ensure that somebody is going to, like, buy your product than you will die if you don't get this.
Yeah.
I mean, for medications, especially.
Yeah,
Oh god, like
yo,
insulin when you don't have health insurance is just ridiculous.
Yeah, isn't it like $750 a month, like minimum, just to get insulin?
Yeah.
It's fucking insane. Ugh.
I thought
I-
they put a cap on insulin or something like that, unless I'm mistaken.
I hope so. I don't know.
I know that I heard about, like, insulin prices, and I know right now too, like, Narcan, the price for Narcan is so fucking expensive too right now.
I hate that. The rehab like industry too, just Narcan's reminding me of like the rehab industrial complex. The way that like they literally will have people working at like drug rehabs that will get you hooked back on whatever drug that you're on just so that you can like continue to tour around more rehabs. Like relapse and then go back and then relapse and then go back. It's this whole like complex thing.
Yeah, isn't that part of the controversy around methadone? That like methadone is not necessary. You know, it helps a lot of people, but then people are just hooked on methadone. That
Wasn't there like clinics where you can like self-inject, and there's like a
They have that in
I don't
Canada.
know if it's in the States. I don't know if we have any in the States, but I've heard of like the injection sites where there's like a nurse standby
Like
or
safe
whatever.
injection sites and stuff.
Yeah.
Those are
I
cool.
think that
mean,
they
at least
do
it's like
have it
harm
in the
reduction.
state. Yeah, because I think what they do is they supervise you. I don't think they actually inject for you, and that's why it's not
No,
illegal.
I don't think they would legally be able to.
Yeah, they just like oversee it.
Yeah, they provide, like fresh equipment. And Narcan is free in Canada.
Oh, that's awesome.
What is Narcan exactly?
It
stops you from... Go for it.
Oh no, it's just it's a kind of just like a booster to your system if you're ODing. It kind of just what does it actually do? Yeah, naloxone.
It's like almost like an
it's like an EpiPen.
Like
okay.
fucking like what the fuck's that movie? Pulp Fiction type shit.
Adrenaline, yeah. That's epinephrine.
Jordy, what state do you live in?
I live in Colorado.
Oh, okay. Nice. They're kind of progressive, aren't they?
Kinda. I used to live in Washington, which was better.
What'd you say, Lex?
Didn't you guys get legal shrooms or some shit?
Yeah. That's funny.
Fucking nice.
Shrooms and
jealous.
weed, baby.
Laws
they
around
also just need
shrooms are
to-
fucking weird. Like, you can legally buy spores, but you can't legally buy grown mushrooms.
Weird.
You can buy them online in Canada.
Yeah, you could buy them online here, too. I got some in my closet that I need to tend to.
Oh no, I mean you can buy just buy already processed.
Oh, nice.
Or is
Yeah.
fucking spice illegal everywhere now, or is it just like Wisconsin and West?
I think it was legal, and then they passed a law that made it illegal. And
yeah, I know there
Spice
were
is
some
fucking...
shops still here that were selling it like last year, and they got fucking big ass.
Who was
Spice
selling
is
it?
fucked.
The head shops in Wisconsin, and well, specifically Milwaukee, they were still selling fucking spice, and they got like raided. I don't know where the fuck they're probably ordering the shits online. Same with the cartridges that had that fucking shit in it. That, you know what I'm talking about? When that whole thing happened, they're like vaping's killing people.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bullshit. They had a bunch of like people die in Milwaukee because they were selling those fake cartridges and shit at head shops and all sorts of fucking wild shit. I think they found someone in Wisconsin with like fucking millions of dollars worth of these fucking cartridges or some bullshit.
Damn.
Crazy ass shit.
What is spice?
It's like synthetic weed, but it makes you trip out.
I've seen videos of one called K2 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the same
That
thing,
is...
I think.
Yeah. And that shit's weird because I remember when it first came out, like, we all bought it and tried it, and it just, like, gave you a headache. But then I remember, like, a few years ago, or maybe it was last year, there were, like, all these crackdowns on spice and stuff, and there was videos of people, like, convulsing in parks because someone was giving spice to, like, homeless people, and they were, like, having seizures. Like, 20 people got sent to the hospital in one day, I think in New Haven, Connecticut or something, because of spice, like bad spice going around. Like, I feel like there's no way that shit is the same shit that was being sold in head shops. Like, I don't even know what the fuck spice is supposed to be. Like, I think it's all different shit.
I wonder if there's fentanyl in it.
I think it's one of those like designer drugs where it's like very similar to weed, but they changed a couple molecules so it's not THC in there. So it's like
fucking
weed.
like Walmart off-brand of weed, like not even fucking designer, like
knockoff weed.
Well, it's like it's completely made, isn't it?
Yeah, like that's the.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up.
part.
I don't know what Google what it is.
So it's shredded plant material sold as liquids.
Yeah, like I swear I tried that
yeah.
shit and it would just like give me a headache and didn't do anything. So there's no way I tried what these people were convulsing over. Like this, I don't know. Maybe spice is like an umbrella
What
term that
what
refers to multiple
what
things.
dried plant material specifically? Like
Yeah.
was it just like some tobacco they infused with some bullshit?
So
Like
it's just chemical.
That's probably how
Yeah.
they get away
Yeah.
with it. Like with the advent of
Alright.
CRISPR-Cas9, genetic is engineering is really easy. So they probably literally just like took weed, changed its DNA so it's not weed anymore, just dried it. So that-
Here's the thing for me, like the first time I thought I ever smoked weed, it turns out that I smoked salvia. And if you know what,
Oh my god.
yeah,
I love you
yeah,
so much. That
exactly,
is my
exactly.
favorite
Oh
Some of
my
thing.
y'all know
god.
exactly what I'm talking about. Some of y'all know
Yep.
exactly
Yeah,
what I'm
you
talking
like
about.
got a DMT trip.
For
I,
real. You thought
I've
that was weed? Nah, bro. That was
wasn't it like
Yeah, you're in a
4000,
different
4000.
dimension, bruh. What
I
the
smoked
fuck?
from what I was told was PCP laced once, and that was a nightmare.
Oof.
literally saying like it was like purgatory. Like no attention, like I was like on couch lock, like fearful.
Yeah,
So did
everything's
anybody ever have a good first time smoking weed?
yes.
I
I
had
had
an
an
amazing
amazing time.
time.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
I just couldn't stop laughing. Everything was so fucking funny.
yeah. I was
Look,
grade 9.
salvia,
Yeah.
salvia was scary the first time, and then like maybe like 10 or 20 minutes after, it felt like I was just smoking like regular like weed. Like that's just how it felt. I don't know if they fucking sniffed that shit, but like it just felt good afterwards. Like nigga, I was
Dude,
laughing at the clouds. I was laughing at everything. Everything just felt good. Like
did
I'm
you
not gonna sit
launch
up here and
off?
say I'm not gonna advocate salvia and weed because I feel like that's just like a problem. That's gonna be a problem if anybody ever has to do that type of shit.
Yeah.
I would not recommend it ever. Jesus Christ! Like know your fucking herbs. Like you know mushrooms. Jesus. Oh
Yeah,
man, we need them. I
Salvia's
need
like an
them.
extended DMT trip. That's crazy. You were not ready. They told you you're
Wait, how
smoking
long
weed
does it last?
like 20 minutes, right, Torin?
I mean like okay, so maybe it felt like 20 minutes, and after that like I was just laughing and giggling because I don't know what the fuck else was it. Like I was just smoking with some random Indian kid. I would have never known what the fuck was in that shit. And like it could have been salvia and it could have been weed because he told me it was weed. It was I was like you will never know unless you know for sure. Like this is why I'm gonna sit up here and say if the government's listening to NSA, fuck y'all niggas and legalize weed. Fuck you, okay? That's my public surveillance announcement, motherfucker.
Don't worry, they're busy right now. There's no way. This is the time if you have any terrorist sentiments to air them out. 'Cause the NSA is fucking busy right now. They can't do shit.
I think this is encrypted,
One
isn't
of
it?
my
I mean, who knows
friends,
how encrypted?
I
Don't
mean,
say it on.
I don't know.
no, they're definitely all up in Discord. I mean, Discord is where a lot of like groups are
There's
meeting.
yeah, there's so many fucking shitty ass fucking incel fucking pieces of shit ass people up in this Discords plotting some bullshit like
Yeah, the
the
NSA
gamer
is
community.
definitely
I don't
in
even want to
Discord.
know like
Edward,
oh
you're
my
gonna
god.
say something. What was it?
oh, it was no, it was stupid. Now it's not on the topic of Discord. My friend embroidered a patch with the Antifa logo and sent me a picture of them like sewing it on their jacket with the caption, "Guess who just became an enemy of the state?" And I think that's the ballsiest text I've ever received from anybody
Yeah,
ever.
it's pretty
Like
badass.
this
Love
was
that.
the day after Trump like tried to declare Antifa a domestic terrorist
Yeah.
organization.
I heard that the FBI was questioning arrested protesters about whether or not they had anti-fascist sympathies or had anything to do with Antifa. So that's
Oh my
kind
god.
of yes.
That makes me
What is
so
that like a
mad.
trick question? You're supposed to be like,
Actually,
yeah.
yes, I do.
Yeah, I'm a
no, I love
fascist.
fascism.
Yeah, like what? I wonder what they're
I'm
doing.
glad you
Like,
brought that up because I've been meaning to fucking talk about it.
yeah, I have
No,
some
but
conflicting opinions if you want to hear about them. Like, what are you
Antifa,
supposed to answer?
Antifa's the most successful Russian psyop I've ever seen in my entire life. Like the organization doesn't exist and never existed. It was literally like Russia made some fucking Facebook events and as Antifa and got a whole bunch of people to show up, and that's it. That's how it started. And then there was
No,
just the debate about whether or not Antifa was a real thing.
no, because I remember being in high school going to like a vegan picnic and there was like Antifa there. Like,
What?
it,
How,
Just shit
yeah,
on
really?
their own.
Were they
yeah, it was.
anti-fascists or were they
Antifa.
explicitly and proclaimed Antifa?
I swear they were Antifa. Like, I thought that this was just a thing, like, kids into punk music and veganism and shit were into for a while. Like,
Oh,
I
I thought
don't think
Antifa
that it
was
was.
the new.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah,
like,
Is
I
it?
mean, Antifa isn't like an organized thing. Is it? Does anybody have proof of Antifa? Because my boomer dad keeps trying to tell me that like Antifa has like an
An organized, right,
indoctrinating like
right.
pamphlet and shit that like you're supposed to read or something. But I'm like 99% sure that that's just like Alex Jones propaganda.
Not.
no,
Oh, that they
that's
have a
fake.
book.
I'm calling it.
I don't know
Like,
when the word Antifa
If they
happened,
wrote,
but
who are
when
have,
is the
Antifa?
first
but
use of the word? Oh yeah, no. This
Charlottesville.
this goes back to the 20s and the 30s. They have the same logo. It
Um,
starts in like
really?
Germany and shit. I don't know when they started
oh,
using the word Antifa, but because I've heard about this too, that in Germany Antifa is like really big,
Yeah,
or
I heard about it
Antifa.
starting in World War II.
so
well,
it's
like
just an
Yeah.
Italy,
idea.
yeah, it's like this whole fucking thing.
Same reason
Well,
they were
like I
talking
think
about
as a
World
But
War
it's like a
Three.
sentiment, it's
movement, not a group.
existed since World War II.
No, for sure, it's more of like definitely a movement, of ideology, a political, know, fucking statement for sure. Like, I'm gonna post this in the chat.
Well, I
I
think.
have this on the back of my car, right? I have this decal on the back of my car that says "Kill Fascists," right?
Uh-oh.
See,
Speaking
They're
of
gonna take your plates again, girl. You
I
better be
love you.
careful.
I know, I know. I get fucking pulled over all the
Can we
time.
be best friends?
They are taking those plates.
Kill fascists.
Well,
I
when we were
said, Dad, what's
talking
on this
about
Always
t-shirt?
Antifa,
so they'll be like, "Your tints are really dark," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know."
well, when people were talking about Antifa potentially being labeled a terrorist group, and the conversation went to like, oh, they're not a terrorist group because they have no leaders or whatever, I feel like the actual problem is the definition of terrorism, because if you look at it, Antifa does fit the definition of terrorism. Like, the government could totally choose to label them a terrorist organization. The problem isn't with them determining Antifa as a terrorist group. The problem is what the fuck terrorism is under law. I'll read it to us
Yeah,
because it's
please.
very, very not cool. Let's see. Terrorism legal definition.
Look. Here's where I want to like say something. It's like, didn't they try to designate Black Lives Matter as a terrorist group too?
There'd
I
be no
believe
fucking
so.
way. Like,
Here, let me read the definition, and you guys can see how easy it is for the FBI to basically call any group they want a terrorist group. Okay, so the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations defines terrorism as, you ready? Quote, the unlawful use of force and violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of political or social objectives. Like, you
but how
could
is
just
that not
based on
freedom of
that.
speech, though? Like,
Well, that's the thing. That's like, that's.
I could literally just be like, "I'm in ISIS," like, and what the fuck is anybody gonna do about it? You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I remember one time in school, it was like maybe 7th grade or some bullshit, and I was like pissed at my gym teacher, and I told her that I was going to blow her up. And they made this whole fucking deal. Like, they asked me if I could make a bomb at home and, like, all this shit. And I was just, like, kidding. And it was just, like, this whole fucking thing. That's what it reminded me of.
Damn, did the school like take it to the police or was it just through school?
I could not go to school anymore just because I was so bad. I had to go to, they called it day treatment or some shit where you go to this fake school with a bunch of kids that are also really fucked up. And you just sit in a room and talk about your feelings and eat like a really shitty
My
school.
God.
It's like so fucking stupid.
Damn.
That
How
reminds me
long
of-
were you there?
So I got like, I don't even know, it's like it's suspended or whatever the hell, like expelled, but because they didn't let me go to graduation, but I got to go like to high school, but for like a year or so, and I had to go in the summer too, and it was so fucking shitty. You just meet the weirdest people like ever. Like, let's just put all these fucking terrible kids together that are gonna become friends, so they just do their bullshit together.
Was it like an outpatient like treatment center type of thing, or more like a like?
Kinda, but you like still did like you had to do your school shit.
Yeah. My brother
Yeah.
went to a school like that.
Like
But it was like high school or like middle school were like different, but like they were like you're too like grown acting to be in the middle school, so you can be with the high schooler. So I thought it was really cool. Like,
that's that school to prison pipeline shit I be talking about. Like,
Yeah.
for real. Like, I remember back in pre-K, I can't talk too much about like, because I remember kindergarten. It wasn't necessarily pre-K. I remember kindergarten for me. Like, I just remember that shit for no fucking reason. But like, on another example, I was gonna say, fuck, what exactly was it? I remember being in high school and they had us write a report on what happened during the Olympics in Georgia. Like, you could pick out of a hat like all the shit that happened, blah 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 blase splee blase. You know what I'm talking about. But like it was like we were going through classes and we were talking about all types of shit. Like say I forgot what it was called. It was the class was like, it wasn't chemistry, it was more so like forensics. It was called forensics class. And like they tied forensics with chemistry, and I was in like, this was probably like 2016 2015 for me. And like they had us study like what happened during like certain like shootings, certain terrorist stuff that went down. And I remember looking up stuff that they did there during the Olympics for 1996, and dead ass, like they had a whole list of stuff that you could do, like to make a pipe bomb. All I did was Google how to make a pipe bomb, and straight up, I told them exactly what they did during the 1996 Olympics in Georgia. I told them exactly what they did, and everybody in the class was fucking astounded. Guess what? I still got a C.
What the hell? You deserved an A.
It was funny as fuck to me because I was with one of the people. Like, I could have sworn the person I was working on this project with was a FBI agent. Because look. Even then, like I was chilling with this nigga like beforehand. He's not even a nigga. I just like to call everybody in Georgia a nigga for like no reason. I have a lot of like right redneck, right white, right.
all the above.
Yeah, you got like friends in the KKK and shit.
Yeah, like for real. Like I just be like, yo, nigga. It's like, man, I'm sitting up here like, man. He's sitting up here like, bro, do you need weed? I'm like, nah, bro. I'm like, I have weed right now. Let's go out and smoke. Fuck it. So we go out, we smoking this shit, and this nigga points me to a whole ass bag full of weed. He's just like, hey, what is that? I was like, for real? All right, fuck it, I'm gonna pick it up. There was a whole like 8 grams in that motherfucker. I was like, hey, I'm keeping this. It's like, hey man, that's all you. It's like, fuck it. This nigga had like, he was like, man, I'm selling it anyway. I already got some shit for me. I was like, nigga, I smoked 8 grams in like 1 or 2 nights. I was like, Jesus Christ. That's a different story, but like you can separate these two. It's not fucking matter. It's like shit.
Was it
It was funny
Salvia?
as fuck. This is some real shit. Like I could sit up here like in 2016, 2017, you could like be around these types of people. You could be around any type of people, and like even still, the government wouldn't fucking know exactly what the fuck exactly everybody's on. Like we could Google how to make a fucking pipe bomb, and it's right there. And I think the reason why is because like they're looking for anybody and everybody, and it's stupid. It's so stupid. It's not that stupid, but it's stupid. It's stupid.
Not to go too off topic, but you bring up something that I've been thinking about a lot. Because, I'm a big free speech advocate. I'm really wary of the government putting any sort of limitations on free speech, including things like hate speech, because that can be abused really easily. But the only place where I feel like I have major pause is in wondering about things like what you were talking about, like weapons technology information. Like, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that, like, that information itself can almost be understood as a weapon in certain instances? Like right now we're still at the point where people can barely even make like a 3D printed weapon, but in the foreseeable future this will change. Like what if people can somehow figure out a way to make a fucking nuclear bomb or something, like in the comfort of their very home? Like would we want to put limitations on things like this? And if we did, how would we fucking word these kinds of laws, What do you think?
Maybe just
I mean,
whoever wants to go.
100%.
Lex started.
Okay.
Lex, you
I
first.
was just thinking like the limitations being mass weapons of destruction. Like obviously, I don't think anyone in the future should be able to have access to such fucking degree of a weapon, but I think it's the right to people to be able to access, okay, how do I make this, whatever fucking bomb, whatever the fuck they're trying to, because I
Right.
mean, they have the right to have a weapon. And it's like, what is a weapon? Like my car is a fucking weapon, my fucking body is a weapon, fucking anything's a fucking weapon if I want it to be. So it's like, what is the difference between, this and that? I don't know.
Facts.
I'd
And
like to
that's
say
why it's
there's
really... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Torn.
I'm sorry. I'd like to say there's a lot more care put into this type of stuff, even from the people who are considering it as a weapon. It's just like, in the end, how are you going to be able to use this weapon? And if like it gets like fucked up, are you still going to be able to use this weapon? It's just like, even then, like how you mentioned like the 3D printers. I like that you mentioned that, because people really are like they're printing 3D guns right now as we speak, and they're going to use these as weapons. And like if you don't have anything to make a weapon, it's sitting up here like you don't have it. Like I liken it more so towards making a sword, like because before there were guns, there were swords, and you have to put a lot of work and energy into making a sword. There's a whole lot of that. You gotta put a lot of work and energy into like dodging and like being able to not die from the sword.
So everybody
You
just
live by the sword, you die by the sword, for real. But that's all I can say about that.
So,
Right.
like,
We
what
gotta
would
bring
you-
back the struggle of
Well,
making weapons. Like, you only deserve to have a sword if you can forge it yourself out of the fucking flames. Like, otherwise you
making
don't
a
deserve
weapon
this
is
shit.
easy.
What'd you say, Lex?
Those old ass fucking musket guns that take like fucking like 20 minutes to fucking reload because you have to put like powder and shit in it.
Yeah,
We
those are
only
like
have-
mini bombs. If you shoot someone in the head, their head just like totally explodes.
We can only have those.
Musket only.
Everyone can have them, or nobody can have them. That's the only option.
Can I say something about like information as a weapon?
Yes.
So like, okay, 3D printed guns, wild. I think that that's a good example of like information being a weapon, but even beyond, because that's information on how to build a weapon. But like considering stuff like the rapidly more available CRISPR-Cas9 technology, which allows people to genetically engineer shit. Like the genome for the coronavirus is publicly available. Like if some biohacker wanted to go out and slightly modify the genome of the coronavirus, theoretically any random dude who had even a rudimentary knowledge of biology and the right materials, which are rapidly becoming cheap to produce, could make their own slightly different coronavirus that wouldn't be impacted by the vaccines that are coming out or that are projected to come out. So like I
Damn,
think
that's
that
a
is
point.
That's
a
terrifying.
clear example of information itself, because that's just genetic information being
That
used as a
documentary
weapon.
scared the fuck out of me when I watched it.
Same.
That dude
Yeah.
that was fucking making glow-in-the-dark dogs or whatever the fuck he was doing, like, that shit's fucking wild.
I
Yeah.
follow him on YouTube now. Follow him on YouTube is crazy. He's
What's his
injecting. Oh, I forget. I'll find it. It's like David something, I think. He's like injecting himself with random shit. Like he did something where he's making his waistline thinner and his muscles like denser, and he's already like physically changing. You can see it in his YouTube videos. It's like, dude, this shit is yeah. Dude,
Yeah,
it's
holy
crazy. I think that this is all part of why, I mean, alongside things like climate change, like we need to really, Congress needs to create some fucking scientific councils because we're already seeing like, they talked about in that documentary how they're doing things like releasing populations of genetically modified mice into certain environments because they're supposed to help against like certain tick populations and shit like this. It's like, how do we know that these fucking genetically modified mice aren't going to come back with like super AIDS or something, like we need people who understand science having some sort of influence on laws and shit, because right now like a lot of lawmakers don't understand this shit at all and are just taking scientists' words for certain things, and people barely have enough scientific literacy to like comprehend an abstract about like a psychiatry study, like people don't know shit. Like this shit is really scary as technology advances. Like I feel like yeah, we're about to see some disasters.
Yeah.
I really do be
Basically.
wondering, like, what racism as a disease, because I've been seeing that in news lines lately. Like they're calling racism a disease. They were calling that shit before like it was even on like television. Racism is a disease. I used to hear that shit when I was a kid. Even like it's weird.
It
We
does
talked about
function
last
like
week, I
one.
asked about
What can scientists say about that type of shit? It's weird.
what
Like
what's the definition of a disease? Like when they talk about like addiction being a disease or like that being a disease.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. I never even thought of it because I've seen racism referred to as a disease, and I felt like that was always metaphorical. But Lex, what you just said makes me think like, yeah, I mean, it could be scientifically classified as some sort of personality disorder.
Wait, let me look up the definition.
Look up
Disease
the
Disorder of
CDC
structure or
definition.
function.
Okay.
Look up the
Here I am.
legal definition, the CDC definition, or DSM. I don't know whatever legal documents about medical terminology. Look up that one.
Okay. Here,
For some reason,
Cambridge English Dictionary. Medicine.net doesn't sound like good.
Yeah, I'm like, they don't know shit.
I do remember hearing something about some study about slight like they could tell it, and I don't remember if it had to do with cognition or any sort of neuroscience, I mean, I know how it would apply from a child's perspective, you know, and being taught essentially being taught to be racist, and then how that's just passed on. But I feel like I do remember reading something about some research that was trying to do that. I think there is research that exists. I will look. Racism in.
Every time I type in
God.
disease, coronavirus just comes up. So
Oh,
I
here.
don't
Of
know.
course.
I found a really cool
Racism.
article. I'm gonna send it to
GDR.
the chat.
Is it
Yeah, post
racism
it.
and human genome diversity?
No, it's titled "What is a Disease?"
Yeah, because I mean, you could easily make the argument that racism is a public health crisis, you know? Like, obviously, it's
Just
jeopardizing the
says the
lives of
disorder
non-white
of
people.
structure or function.
Yeah, I
Very
think that
vague.
racism is a public health crisis, but I don't think it counts as a disease.
Well,
I
it
think
is
it's a,
interesting to think, like, why is addiction a disease? Is it literally a disease, or is disease it's considered a sort of psychological disease, and in that sense it's like very conceptual. Addiction isn't literally a disease, but it's classified as literally a disease in the medical literature. So what would be the difference
Exactly.
between a thing like racism and addiction, or racism and narcissistic personality disorder, or bipolar, other things that aren't really structural diseases or viruses, but they become personality disorders that jeopardize
and,
the health of yourself and other people?
Well, they can
and
prove that in your.
addiction causes a physical change in your
Yeah.
brain. Like let's talk about heroin or opioid addiction. Your brain naturally has opioid receptors in it, but when you become addicted to heroin, your brain creates a lot more opioid receptors, so you never feel like you are having your normal amount of opioid receptors properly
Yeah, but
stimulated.
there's no actual structural determinants of disease as far as the medical definition of addiction, rather, as far as the medical definition goes. I mean, because you can even be diagnosed with things like sex addiction or weed addiction, even though weed is not physically addicting, you know. There's all types of addictions that people that are medicalized, you know, that really don't represent some sort of structural abnormality or set of conditions. So
Well,
couldn't racism be classified as something like a personality disorder even?
I would like to think now that I'm really thinking about it, I'd like to think that like you could probably even classify this in like the type of fetishization of certain things. And I hate to say fetishization because even now, like the way like us, modern us, how we think, it's not even like we don't fetishize this type of shit. It's just like one of those things where, and it feels like I'm answering my question, but like we don't think about this type of shit as a fetishization. We like to think so scientifically to the point where it's just like where there's this that happens to it, and there's this that happens to it, and there's this that happens to it. We can't look at this shit as like it's crack. We can't look at this shit as like it's heroin or anything. We have to look at this as like it is, man. We aren't really the thugs, killers, and gangsters that y'all think we are. A lot of people like to make it out to be, but like, what was that thing Earl Sweatshirt said? Earl said, "Hey, peace to every crease on your brain." Like, yo, man. Every time we think, every time we do something, every time we do anything, and we learn something from it, we get a crease on our brain. And the real sickness, as I like to say, the real sickness comes from society. And not even just society, it's like society in numbers and everything. It's like you can look at society and you can look at the numbers, statistics. The statistics are there. It's like everybody. One of the quotes that I like to hear that I say is like, I love this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. Even though we are 13%, we commit 50% of the crime. I'm just like, fuck yeah. I'm
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Can
y'all
I say
don't
something?
understand why we do this shit. Hey, I'm gonna let you speak, man. I'm gonna let you speak, my man. You go.
No,
Hold up.
I just wanted to say something about how you can. I think they are able to essentially point out established neural circuits, and that means that you can essentially see, the type of, if someone has this set of circuitry or this framework in their brain that quote racism is. And so I think there is a possibility to somehow restructure these frames that we have, that like the idea encompassing racism is a framework in someone's brain. And so if you can essentially like break that frame, so like information is data in neurons in your brain, so it's become like a physical thing. So I think that's really interesting because it shows that experience, like an experience or a thought is like a real, like a thing, a tangible thing.
My man,
Right.
I kind of want to ask this. Do you like to look at like World War II type dudes who like who've done experiments? Because I've done a little bit of research on that. It's like, because even that like corresponds to where we're at now today. Like people who have done shit during World War II, like the fucking Nazi Germany. You look at them and you've seen what the fuck they've done. I don't like to fucking point this shit out, but like we're at where we're at now. I'm not saying we need to fucking do anything else. Everything else is gonna have to come naturally. But like,
No, I mean like they can, like through like imaging, like they don't actually go in. I don't mean like physical, like maybe I misspoke on what I meant by physical, like in the term of a neuron. And so they can digitally image brain, they can brain map using two different types of technology. One
Wait,
is
I
like,
want to know where Torn was just going. Torn, what were you getting at with speaking about World War II, like
personally,
experiments on people?
I was getting that programming because it wasn't just people. They were doing shit on animals. Like the whole psychology of everything. They were trying to figure out everything in life. And I figure that's the weirdest thing. Because if you can figure out everything in life, then you can figure out like not just, I've already said it, fuck. I'm sorry. I'm stupid. I'm so stupid. If you can figure out everything in life, you done figured out life. Because I was in the point where I'm just like,
That's deep as fuck.
It's like, hey, bro, for
I mean,
real, right?
That's
super
deep.
I get that, and so it's like, how do we reach that stage?
Well, I think what you're saying, Rachel, too. I mean, these ideas all tie together. But that's a valid point, that like racism could be mentally approached a bit like it is a structural neurological disorder in the sense that it's a learned behavior, and to speak of fetishization, even in a sexual context, this is observable. We now seeing things like 12-year-old boys experiencing erectile dysfunction because of their repeated exposure to pornography and these kinds of crazy hypersexualized images that people are using to get off, and now they can't get off in real life because they can only get off.
I got more to say about that type of shit than anything, but
Oh no.
I'm gonna let you finish.
Don't
I'm
get
gonna let
me
you finish. I promise.
I
Probably
do too,
for a
and I
lot.
don't even want to go down this wormhole. What'd you say, Lex?
I said you and Torn should have your own conversation because I feel like Buttress could go on about fucking porn for
I could. That's why I'm not going to. But it's interesting to think about, how maybe things like behavioral, what's it called? I think it's called behavioral cognitive therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Things like this is used to like reinforce new ideas. I think things like misogyny and racism do become reinforced in a way that is neurological, where people experience things like visceral disgust, visceral fear when they see black people versus white people. And this is part of what underlies, the mechanism that allows cops to pull the trigger so quickly in a split moment where they're not even consciously thinking. They pull the trigger easier on black people than on white people. That's not a conscious decision that they sit there and make. This is a split-second decision, but it's informed by these underlying processes that I think probably do become neurological, and these biases that are reinforced in their fucking mind. So I think that there is an argument to be made that there could be therapies to help people become less racist and shit. Repeated exposure. I think this is why people who actually spend time with black people and non-white people don't have these aren't always clutching their purse whenever they see a black man on the street and shit, because they've been exposed to black people and realize, oh, they're not all fucking thugs or whatever that commit 50% of crime. And I wanted to speak to that real quick too. It's not that black people, I know I don't have to tell you, but just to tell anyone listening in the world, it's not that black people actually commit 50% of crime. It's that black people are fucking convicted and prosecuted for 50% of crime, but that doesn't mean that you're really committing it. And also that crimes are custom tailored to fit what black people do, like the crack cocaine thing we were talking about. Like, there's no reason that crack cocaine should have longer sentences than cocaine, but it does because black people do crack cocaine, so just wanted to reinforce that idea.
Can I have a hot take?
Drop it.
Is that what you call it? Yeah. Here's my thing. So you're talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. So do you think that you could say that these, this type of hate ideologies or these beliefs, these racist beliefs, are a form of PTSD?
No.
No?
No, because that requires trauma.
Hey?
There's no trauma. What is the
Yeah,
trauma?
what would the trauma be?
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about it because, I mean, I'm just thinking on if PTSD on a spectrum, and I'm not in I was hesitant to bring this up because
Hold up. What was your original question? I'm sorry. Continue your thought. For real.
that racism could be a form of PTSD.
Ooh.
And
No.
I was hesitant to bring it up because
Unless a black man tortured your family to death in front of you
I
or
don't-
something, like what else? What is the trauma?
Okay, so I'm not I was hesitant to bring it up because I didn't want to what do you call that? To play down intent, severe PTSD things. But I think, if you could, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm not trying to take away from the severity of PTSD. Like, I'm just generally interested in PTSD.
No, I think what's contentious about your take is the implication that black people or any non-white people could have traumatized
No.
anyone that's white.
Directly. I'm not talking about it happening directly. I'm talking about it being fed, all this shit when you're a child, or through whatever, from your family or from
White supremacy trauma to white people?
I'm not talking about it necessarily being like in terms of if we're looking at a child who is a sponge and has no way to interpret the things that he's being taught or being experienced to, could that not be a form of trauma?
No, because Rachel, I think the problem is that PTSD is a very specific disorder. I think the mechanism that you're alluding to is the same one that underlies something like PTSD versus something like a phobia. Phobias, people have phobias from things like repeated exposure to a thing that they found viscerally uncomfortable. That's the same mechanism of action, but PTSD is very specific and it relates to trauma, So I don't think it's possible for white people to be traumatized traumatized by anything, but I think, yeah, through repeated exposure and having this repeated reaction of visceral disgust or hatred, yeah, I think that becomes reinforced the same way like trauma becomes reinforced in your brain and you have this or that reaction. But PTSD is just so highly specific, you know. I think
But
if
is so
anything, probably black people have PTSD from white people.
well, yeah. I mean,
Like,
I don't doubt that at all. I mean,
wait,
I'm
Jordy
not
was
trying.
gonna say something actually. Jordy, what were you gonna say?
I wanted to say to you, Rachel, that I feel like um maybe a better word for what you're talking about. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I definitely feel like white people and also the police force like institute a lot of fear mongering within their own relative groups, like to new new people that are born or new cops that are initiated or whatever. I read this article about like a cop that had resigned who was talking about like kind of like fear mongering and like conspiracy theories within the police force during training and stuff, and how they just show video after video of cops being murdered and instill all of this fear in you that makes you feel like everyone's out to get you. So I do think that there's merit to what you're saying with regards to like, I think that some really naive white people genuinely do feel like they're in danger and they're like genuinely scared and feel like they're being persecuted just by like the existence of other people because of the extent to which like that generational like passing down of like fear and
Yeah,
like
no, yeah, you understand. Yeah.
and like prejudice, you know, goes so deep. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's like what you were getting at.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I mean, I was just trying to look at, you know, if you know, so if you look at PTSD, and it's like it's a traumatic event that like heavily you know, cemented this neural. So I've just been really into like cognition lately, and so that's why I'm just thinking about it. But you know, so it's essentially you have this traumatic event that establishes this concrete circuit in your brain, and so every time, you know, your brain before your own perception is, you know, interpreting the world, something triggers it, and then it's brought to your awareness, and then that sets off the chain reaction of, you know, this really bad circuit in your brain that is associated with this traumatic event. So that's why they use cognitive behavioral therapy to essentially reestablish a new circuit, like getting on an elevator. So say you're traumatized or whatever, you know, like the only way to do it is to actively take this person who has PTSD and just slowly reconvince them that there's nothing to be worried about. So that's
Yeah,
why I was just coming from.
but PTSD is just highly specific, you know, because there's a big difference between someone who is afraid of elevators and can be helped with
Well,
cognitive behavioral
right.
therapy and somebody who has PTSD from an incident with an elevator. You know what I'm saying? So in both cases, there's somebody who has some sort of neural reinforcement of this fear or something. But
Right.
PTSD is just highly specific and has to do with incidents of trauma, you know, like extreme, like it's like, you know, war veterans have
Well,
PTSD
so,
and stuff. You
right.
wouldn't say someone who has an irrational fear of elevators, maybe someone who has never even been on an elevator, they too can be helped through cognitive behavioral therapy, and they too have, you know, I'm sure their neurology has been altered in a way where they respond to an elevator in a way that they have
Right.
this visceral response. That wouldn't be PTSD though, because there was no traumatic incident.
Right. But so I'm talking. But in the case of young children, you know, they don't have the ability to. Uh, you know, I'm trying to like scale it appropriate to make it relative to the. I mean, not to say that children can't experience severe forms of trauma. I mean, obviously, there's fucking millions of cases of it, but I don't know. I'm just trying to. I'm not like for it or against it. I just wanted to put the thought out there.
I
I
think
do.
the idea is fine, but the PTSD element is
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense because without a traumatic incident, I mean, the people who are most afraid of black people are largely people who have never even interacted with black people. So you wouldn't say
Yeah.
that they have PTSD. They have an irrational fear, a phobia of black people
Right.
that I think,
Look,
this kind of a thing is also influenced by like negative reinforcement, and they could be
Right.
helped with cognitive behavioral therapy, but that's not PTSD.
Right.
Look. In my opinion, it's bigger than black people and it's bigger than white people. Look, because where I am right now, I'm in America. Look, my father, and I know my father, just so that y'all know, my father has PTSD. He served in the military 20 years. I know for a fact white people have PTSD. I know for a fact these little National Coast Guard kids gonna have PTSD. They gonna have dreams about this shit in the nighttime. They gonna wake up in this shit and they gonna be like, God damn, what the fuck did I just go through? And some of them are gonna have their prejudices, and some of them are gonna fight with us. Some of them are gonna have their prejudices, and some of them are gonna fight with us. And I see it. I really do see it. And this is what scares me. This is my fear. This is my fear. My brother, my sister, my friend, my cousin, my brother, my cousin. This scares the fuck out of me.
What exactly are you saying? What do you think is the thing that's most frightening to you?
I'm scared that even then even though we have people from Canada listening to us, people from South America probably listening to us who know how to speak English. I appreciate y'all too. Don't forget, dog. Damn it. K-Pasa. Fuck you mean, dog? What you mean? You talking to a whole ass nigga. Man, but I'm scared that in the end, where we're at right now, real niggas who are in this situation, we're in America. I'm scared that real niggas are not going to understand real niggas. And I'm scared that these real niggas who all consider themselves real niggas are not going to understand what everybody else is talking about. And I can't sit up here and call myself a real nigga. I'm not no real nigga. Because the definition of real nigga has changed from the 90s to the 2000s, to 2010s, 2020s. We in 2020. I grew up differently from everybody else. And it's not a real conversation, but this is definitely some Gen Z type shit. They like to call us Gen Z too. This is what I find funny. Because personally, I consider myself a Gen Xer. I didn't grow up with the internet. What you talking about? And you can look at a lot of examples of people who didn't grow up with internet or phones or cable. They had at least one of these equations like completely cut out of their life. They were completely cut out of their life. And they didn't understand what it was. Like, man, I look at a phone, I'd be like, I'm supposed to call people on this? I gotta talk to my family on this? What you talking about?
So
Can't I
you
just talk
feel
to my
like
family in person? Like, what you talking about?
So you feel like people are going to be kind of left behind, so to speak, like, because we're sitting here having these discussions about philosophy and neuroscience and whatever. Like, you feel as if people are going to be like left behind in a sense from these kinds of conversations because they might not have access to the sorts of, things that other people have access to.
I definitely feel like that. And that's why, personally, I've always felt like if we always had the voice to speak out and really get together and just like get all this shit the way it was, even earlier when I said, yeah, it's an honor to be here. It's because I'm a black man in America. Like, I could be dead tomorrow. Like, I'm so glad I get to talk to all different forms of life. Even if we all speak the same language, fuck it, nigga. I would learn your language. if I was just sitting up here stranded or some bullshit. It doesn't fucking matter, nigga. Motherfucking, y'all heard the fucking story of Yasuke in Japan. That's, if y'all know what I'm talking about, y'all know what I'm talking about. But like, even then, it's just like, come on, like, cause that's some old world shit, some new world shit. Everybody over here is over here. This is the internet. We all interconnected in some fucking way. Like, we can't sit up here and act like we can't change this shit.
Yeah, dude. I feel like what you just said is really important, you know, and that's part of like the importance of really making education accessible, you know, because you can have like public outreach programs all day long and shit, but if you're not speaking the language of the people who have the hardest time accessing it, then you're not educating anybody, you know, because just exposing people to educational materials is not enough. Like, we need to create common language where there isn't none. It shouldn't be an issue of just educating the uneducated. It has to also be educating the educated and getting them to be able to speak the language of the people they're trying to communicate to, you know. So I definitely think that's something people should be prioritizing, like no man left behind, you know.
The same reason. It's I do actually. I'm sorry. I do. It's like, it's not like I want to go out of my way to say thank you, but like, thank you for speaking what you want. Like, you created this for a reason. I'm I'm sorry. Like, even then, it's
Yeah,
like,
to talk to you. So thanks for being here.
it's thank you. And it's one of the funniest things, because like, as we were talking about PTSD, because I want y'all to get back to that conversation as well. PTSD to like people in every single fucking everywhere. There's PTSD. You can look at like the white kids who deal with their fathers who have PTSD, or their mothers who have PTSD, and everybody who has PTSD, who go through everything. My father has PTSD. He was in the military for 20 years. I'm pretty sure I spoke that out earlier. And even then, man, I have something opposite of him. I have STPD, but those are the same fucking letters. Same
What
fucking
is
letters,
it?
just reorganized.
What
I have
is STPD?
schizotypal personality disorder.
Oh, really?
That's like hearing voices, even though I don't really feel like these are real voices. I sit up here every day and I talk to myself and I say the same type of shit. And not necessarily the same type of shit, but like, I'm always trying to like, it's not refreshing myself. I don't know. I don't know what it is for people who have this type of disorder. Maybe I'm trying to like become something new. I'm trying to like fucking become something better than I was before. It's never gonna fucking better. I don't want to talk too much about myself. But regardless of the fact, I feel like people as a whole, even where we are at, even where everybody else is at, like, it's not gonna matter unless we make a change. Like, we need to just generally make a change, like from where we're at to like to make a future for people who have to deal with this type of shit, who have to deal with everything. And that's probably why I find it so funny. Even if you know what the joke that I'm laughing at, like, it's just fucking funny. It's not even the funniest joke. It's not funny at all. It's never gonna be funny, because the one thing that I've noticed, even through all this shit, is like, they like to say, man, society is sick. Well, guess what, man? We live in a society. Society is gonna be sick. Society's always gonna be sick. But that's all I have to say about that.
Yo, thanks for sharing that with us. I mean, everything you said is just crazy. It's true, you know. Society is sick, and I feel like we're sick because of it. All of us, you know, whether you're on the receiving end of trauma, whether you're have some sort of crazy bias in your head because of what we observe around us, like, we're all so influenced by the way this shit is, you know. So it's definitely, I mean, it's like crazy trying to dismantle the system that also creates the language of all of our thinking, you know. It's like, how do we step outside of the only thing we've ever really even known? Like, it's a crazy task to be working on yourself on an individual level and wondering if you have the correct perspective, and also trying to dismantle the system that created you, you know? So it's a difficult task, but I mean, I think that what we're doing here is important. I hope that you guys get something out of these conversations. I'm gonna have to go in a second, but I feel like you just said, Torn, you know, like our responsibility is to people that are gonna follow from us. So the best thing that we can do is not only try to work and make and fight against the system because we know all the ways that it's broken, but we need to come up with a better one, you know. There's no use in tearing down the system unless we have a plan for a better one. Otherwise, we're just going to end up in another sick society, you know. So, shit, I feel like that's the task before us, and something we should really just be focused on and thinking about constantly. So, thank you, all of you, for being here and having this discussion with me. I hope that you guys keep coming, because we're just going to do this every Sunday until we don't do this every Sunday. So, thanks, guys. I do have to get out of here. You're free to keep talking if you want. But I
Thank
love
you for
all of
putting this
you.
together.
Hell yeah, thank you for being here. It'd be nothing without group participation, you know. I'm glad to see people come. And we had a lot of people in here earlier, and they left when I said bye. So I feel like they were pretty much actively listening on some level. So that's great. That's like 2 times more people than have ever come to book club. So I'm glad people seem to feel us. Thanks. They won't come. Hey, I'm just glad they're showing up for what's actually important, you know.
No, I know, it's fucking great.
There's no immediacy in learning who's Cyril, but like we've said before, this is such a historical moment, and it's still happening. People are still out there burning down Wendy's and shit. Like, there has never been this much show of people to try to fight against police brutality. So now is the time to capitalize on this moment, because it's rare that it's unlikely this will happen again. Unless, of course, coronavirus just continues ravaging our population and employment rates, which, you know, I kind of hope it does, because look at all this time we have to do this.
We'll be prepared. New Jersey.
Hell yeah, New Jersey forever.
Where is it gonna be?
Guys. It's gonna be in fucking, I don't know, Colorado.
I don't have to move.
Hell yeah. We'll stay at Jordy's place. Find us a mountain. Find us a mountain, Jordy. Stick the New Jersey flag on it, and we'll meet you there.
All right, sick.
We're good. All right, guys. Thank you. I hope you're all staying safe, and I'll see you next.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.